I think I've met everybody, but I'm Craig Tyndall, and part of my responsibilities now is to assist in running some of the the trust and a couple of the authorities that the city's creating. So appreciate, first off, everybody's willingness to serve. I know you serve on other capacities, and appreciate your continuing willingness to serve, particularly on this new opportunity that the city's come up with. Gave you a little bit of running start, I hope, and some of the information that I sent out a little bit earlier. And I've talked with a few of you about what our intentions are. So we can talk about those as we go. This is our organizational meeting, so this is to get things started. And by the way, Stephen is with the city TV, so it's not news or anything like that. Friendly media here. So they're going to put together a little something and put on city TV and just about the organization of the Sports Authority and such. So just go about our business and ignore him, and he's used to that.
I like that. That's
Yeah, he likes that. All right. So first thing I will tell you that what we have is required by state laws to have public comments. And we'll jump into our business in a second, but public comments on anything that's on the agenda. Mr. Gore, come in.
Hey, how's it going?
Our city manager. And so if there's any public comments on a regular basis when we start a meeting, we'll start with inviting the public to talk. They're limited to having signed up. It needs to be you need to sign up before the meeting. You're limited to what's on the agenda, and there's a time limit to it. I don't remember what it is, and Melanie probably remembers, but that's all right. I don't know. We don't have anybody signed up for this meeting. Yeah, it's
No, sir.
And it's kind of rare. Hey, Adam, we put you on that side, Adam. I know. It's like church. You always want to sit in the same pew. First order of business, though, is to elect a board chair. So we need a chair that'll run our meetings. And so if anybody has any interest in being a board chair, we'll certainly take anybody that wants to raise their hand to be a chair and let everybody vote on that if there's more than one. If not, then what we've done in the past is people will write names down of who they want to be a board chair, and we'll pass it over, and anybody usually gets one or two votes or gets 2 or 3 votes is stuck with the responsibility. So, but it's an open process. Whatever you guys want, it'll be an election. So it's all up to the board and how they want to go about that. That's just a suggestion. You want to do it by paper ballots, just pass them over, or somebody want to do the board chair?
Paul Latour.
Yeah.
Third, fourth.
All right. Let's see. We'll have Melanie call the roll just to make it official.
Mr. Adams?
Great.
Mr. Ezell?
Aye.
Mr. Latour? Oh, he is the...
I abstain. No, yes.
Mr. Parsley?
Yes.
Ms. Polk?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbow?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
All right. Great. Congratulations, Paul.
Way to go, Paul.
Thank you.
So at this, so we'll turn the meeting over to you. You're the board chair now, and you can run us down our agenda. I'll give you a running start. The next thing is to create a secretary so that we can do things like what we just did and have votes and have them recorded, and the secretary will take care of minutes and things like that. Traditionally, what we do with boards and commissions at the city is that we'll have city staff member be the board secretary, only because they have the resources, they know how to take care of all the documents, and keep those into the future. So we have now the city created a city clerk position, which is Melanie Peterson, right? To your left, I guess, if I'm looking right. And Melanie serves the trust in that capacity, and basically the city in the same capacity. So my recommendation is, if the board's amenable to it, is to have somebody make a motion in a second and vote for Melanie to be the board secretary.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. All right. Does anyone want to act on or make a motion to Craig's recommendation for Melanie to be the secretary?
So moved.
All right. We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Do we call a roll, or can we do it by voice vote, or,
She can call.
but we'll call the roll, then. Please, Melanie.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Ezell?
Yes.
Mr. Latour?
You want to do a vice chair, too?
Aye.
Mr. Parsley? Ms. Polk? Mr. Turnbow?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Melanie. Forward to working with you. Also, it was suggested in the event that I am unable to serve or I don't come back, that we should appoint a vice chair to fill in and fulfill the chair duties if I am absent. So is there anybody who would like to make a motion to nominate a vice chair of the Murfreesboro Sports Authority?
I would nominate Ben Parsley.
All right, we've
Too late, Ben.
got one nomination of Ben.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All right, Melanie, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
Mr. Ezell?
Yes.
Mr. Latour?
Aye.
Mr. Parsley? Ms. Polk?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbow?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Well, congratulations, Ben.
Thank you.
So item number 4 says the adoption of the bylaws. So I guess, I don't know, Craig, do you want to take that over, or?
Sure. The bylaws generally follow other bylaws that we've created for boards and commissions. Nothing on there that's too fancy, pretty straightforward, but provides the necessary for the meetings to be conducted and when they're conducted and how they're to be conducted. I think they were attached to the materials that were sent out early, so you might have gotten a chance to take a look at those. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Yeah, I think everyone else, like myself, got the bylaws, reviewed them. It seems like it's fairly normal and per the statute as well, so.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to make a motion to accept the bylaws as set forward by the city?
So, second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, Melanie, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Ezell?
Yes.
Mr. Latour?
Aye.
Mr. Parsley?
Yes.
Ms. Polk?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbow?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
All right, item number 5, which would be the adoption of board policies, and this will encompass, it looks like 3 attachments, attachment 2 in your packet, 3 in your packet, and 4 also in your packet. The first one is the conflict of interest policy. The second one is the whistleblower policy, and the last one is the records retention policy. I'll toss it back to Craig for any explanation. Do you want to make a comment on any of those particular policies?
Generally, these are standard policies that are adopted by nonprofits, and there's a couple of reasons. It's considered best practice to have these in place, and also the IRS has strongly suggested to maintain a nonprofit status to have, at the very least, these policies in place. So if there's any questions on any of the policy, I'm happy to answer those, or and Adam, I should introduce Adam Tucker, the city attorney, which you all may know, is here as well to answer any legal questions that we might have. So yeah, any questions, that's fine. We should do separate votes on each one of those, just so the record's clear.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we entertain a motion on any of the 3 policies? Okay, with no questions, I will entertain attachment number 2, the conflict of interest policy. Does anyone want to make a motion for adoption?
Move for approval.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All right, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
Mr. Ezell?
Yes.
Mr. Latour?
Yes.
Mr. Parsley? Ms. Polk?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbow?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. The next one for consideration for adoption would be attachment 3, which again is the whistleblower policy. We have a motion to accept.
Move to accept.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, we'll ask Melanie to call the vote, please.
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
Mr. Ezell?
Yes.
Mr. Latour?
Aye.
Mr. Parsley?
Yes.
Ms. Polk?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbow?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. The next one under number 5 is attachment 4, which is the records retention policy. I will entertain a motion from the floor.
Make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, we will ask Melanie to call the roll, please.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Ezell?
Yes.
Mr. Latour?
Aye.
Mr. Parsley?
Yes.
Ms. Polk?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbow?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. All right, item number 6, which is the review of corporate and federal tax status.
So the authority is set up under state statute, which provides that it'll be a nonprofit, and it's been incorporated as a nonprofit corporation as of now. We've discovered this as we've worked with the trust that the city has set up. Maintaining its nonprofit is something that we'll be filing for designation as what's commonly you hear as 501c3, which is generally referred to as a nonprofit. That's the IRS code section. But a 501c3, which exempts the authority from taxation, something that would be important as we go forward. The other designation that the city may decide to undertake is to be designated as a municipal entity under Section 115, which is a lot less common, and you don't usually run into that, but it's something that in our world is out there. It's an exemption from taxation for municipal corporations like the city and from their entities. And that gets very complex. And I won't bore you with all the tax part of that, mostly because I don't want to. I'm not a tax lawyer, and I wouldn't want to pretend to be. Adam can give you a little bit of overview, but he'll disclaim being a tax lawyer, too.
I'm not a tax lawyer either.
Yeah, most lawyers disclaim that pretty quickly. And then, but we do have, and are planning to retain a tax lawyer to make sure that we get the right designation, the right status. It's not something that probably will happen all that quickly, but we'll be monitoring that as we go and keep the board up to date as to where we're at with our designations. Any questions? Generally, when you say tax, most people don't have questions because they don't want to talk about it, but that's where we're at.
Does anyone have any questions about taxes? Tax status?
Taxes of this, not your personal
Yes, yes,
taxes.
no, I
Yes, so we
understand.
don't,
Yeah.
you're on your own, with your own personal taxes.
Okay, so being no discussion, we'll move on to item 7, which is a discussion, purpose, and the mission of the authority. Greg, I assume we'll go back to you.
Yeah, well, actually, we just want to open it up and ask questions and get thoughts from the board. You had a packet that came out to you earlier, the board notebook that gave a little background, some anticipation on what the board might be doing. I think we have an initial thoughts that we can talk about in just a minute about the first thing that the board can really accomplish. But if there's any questions about the general premise of what a sports authority can do and what it can't do, then we're happy to talk about those. Most of you know Nate Williams here, which is our Parks Director, and he'll be an important part of the board, and I'll explain why. What the Sports Authority initially will do is to look at generating revenue through a few different of our sports facilities to be able to supplement Parks and Recreation Board, and Parks and Recreation Department, rather, to assist the facilities in becoming self-sustaining. So that these facilities can run without using tax dollars through sponsorships and other types of arrangements that we have with private industry, that would be a great benefit to the city and the citizens. And so that's really the premise for the Sports Authority. It can do other things. It can do much broader things, and we may entertain those as we get more information from council, looking at different facilities and constructing and financing different facilities as we go forward. But initially, we want to look at supplementing a specific facility, which is Siegel Soccer, through sponsorships. Siegel Soccer has entertained a lot of people, and Nate can probably fill you in on it. We as a city, bought a service called Placer, isn't it?
Placer, yeah.
Placer. Placer, was it AI? Placer AI is the official name, and it tracks how many people come to any type of facility. You can put in all kinds of different areas in the city, any kind of facility, and it will tell you, give you aggregated information about how many people come in there based on cell phone data. So it won't tell you individually, but it will tell you that people have showed up with a cell phone at this location. The Siegel Soccer Complex last year entertained more than 800,000 people just out at Siegel Soccer, which is a huge number. If you go out to Siegel Soccer right now, you won't see much sponsorship or advertising or anything else out there. But that's a lot of eyeballs, and there's a lot of people willing to pay some money to be out there in a very tasteful and appropriate manner. And so that's one thing that we've identified that would be beneficial for the board to enter into, is to develop and perhaps retain a third party that will help us develop sponsorships out at Siegel Soccer. Some of that information was attached in the board book. I talked to you about it. We had a consultant that came in early on, and a professional does this, has done it in the city of Memphis, a lot of different, well, not a lot, but several different facilities, and raised quite a bit of capital, and took a look out there and said that, yes, we were leaving quite a bit of money on the table by not utilizing that facility to the maximum extent. So that's the first thing, I think, as a board that we'll take a look at. Nate, did I miss anything?
No, I'll just say, regarding Siegel being one of our enterprise facility, I think we've got a few within the park system that we're excited to work with. And I'd say Siegel, we've purposely avoided this discussion. We've had businesses, groups that have been interested in sponsorship, but we've held off until we've gotten to this point. So we have all of the data that we can really show to see how much that, sponsorship package for certain elements might be. So it's just an exciting time specifically there because it's teed up and ready to go.
Yeah, and there are professionals in that space that handle that type of situation. So really what we would do to maximize the revenue that could be created over there is to have an agreement with one of those companies that does just that. We retained one that gave us some estimations, not to say that we would necessarily have to use them. They are relatively local. They're here in Tennessee, and they've done quite a bit of work in another city in Tennessee, but there are others out there, and so we can take a look at, depending on the board's preference, on how we want to go about retaining a company that will assist us in doing that. I will add that the MTSU, I learned the other day, and I think it was in the newspaper, but I'd heard about it before, that MTSU has retained a company to do the exact same thing with their sports facilities. So, it's not new, it's very typical. And so, the next step is really for us to discuss and talk about how we want to enter into that type of agreements.
Would the agreement be for that specific location or for all three, or all of them that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think we could broaden it and probably do all three. I think we'd want to focus probably on one right off the bat, only because it gives us a lot to work with right at the very beginning, and then we can see how the other spaces are there. But I would envision, and I'll ask Nate to weigh in, I would envision an agreement that would encompass all three, and then the focus be on the one, and then if if we can move people who aren't ready to do this facility to another facility,
Yeah.
then that would be a good way to go about it.
The other two locations?
Yes, so we've identified, Siegel Soccer Complex, Adams Tennis Complex as another enterprise facility, and then the golf course as well. So I think we go back to Siegel because for a variety of reasons, it's kind of a blank slate right now. We want to prove that it's a place that it can be done effectively and tastefully as well. There's also funding. We've held off on doing any signage out there, but we do need some signage renovation, but we fortunately came in under budget with that project when we renovated it from 2020 to 2023. So we have, some funds left in our CIP to be able to fund some of those things that should pay for themselves.
I have a question about the soccer complex specifically. So do we have any data on how many of those 800,000 people last year are local, against, regional or national? I know there's a lot of tournaments that come in
Sure.
for that. Secondly, as it relates to like a lead sponsor for that facility, it seems like something that's related to youth soccer on a broad scale versus local business would be ideal because, for instance, Roscoe Brown, people going back to Ohio
Right.
after the weekend, they don't care, right? So Nike or, Gatorade, I don't know if those are too big to think, but like something along those lines. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say Siegel specifically, the big indoor facility is kind of the primo naming sponsor. With that one specifically, I have to be kind of careful, but we've had clothing vendors or manufacturers, we've had healthcare industry, we've had grocery stores reach out, some more national brands, but we purposely, like I said, held off on that. So I would say it's more of a national brand. Regarding the data, we can get that very easily using our Placer AI system, and I'll bring that next time we have a meeting just so you can see, and maybe we can have it a little bit interactive. Sam Huddleston, Assistant City Manager, is really the guru when it comes to that, so we might be able to just provide you a demonstration live up here, but we can show you. But the amount of, we hosted the MLS Next Cup, which brought people from all over the world here, and a lot of events like that. This year especially, we're having to, turn some of them away now just because we've kind of hit our capacity.
Good problem to have.
Yeah, and one of the things that a professional in this space can do, and as you probably know, is to put a value on certain types of sponsorships, and that'll probably drive it to a different segment. It might drive it out of the local market just because there's nobody here that's going to pick that up at that price, but that's what it's valued for, and then we'll move to a national, more of a national brand or a regional brand.
The numbers in this PDF that you sent out, the annual investment, $150,000, 15-year term, is that from the consultant? That was their idea?
That was, before they really dug too deep. We paid him to come out and do a cursory review and give some idea of what he's seen, but if we hire somebody else, then they will really dig in hard and get a lot more accurate numbers. So that was just kind of a ballpark.
Sure.
But a very encouraging ballpark.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a silly question here, but I'm going to back up for just a minute before I'm trying to wrap my arms around this. We talked just about Siegel Soccer Park. What all, I'd almost like to see, if it's possible, what are all the assets? City, county, citywide, right? What are all, because I'm just thinking through the broadness, and I think somebody already mentioned it, like, for a big national brand like that to just give them the opportunity to just do soccer, there could be a more broad opportunity when you start putting, I'm too dumb to even know what all is available. I see baseball fields, obviously my kids are involved in all that, but I think for me, certainly, some idea of what are all the assets inside the city that are available. And if we're going to hire somebody to do that, I'd almost like to see them do it on a much broader scale so we have an idea. Again, so if you go to somebody for $150,000 and put it on the Siegel Soccer Park, well, they may give you $250,000 to get the soccer park, sportsplex, who knows. Yeah. But I'd almost be cautious to pigeonhole ourselves directly into only soccer without knowing what all's out there and what the value of those might be. And again, I'm catching up here a little bit.
Sure. I think it's a good point. As a matter of fact, when Nate and I took, Mike Humes is the consultant that we worked with to put together an initial aspect of it, and we stopped, for example, SportsCom. And he had ideas walking through. He said, well, you could do this, you could do that. I've seen this done.
Yeah.
So I think that once we retain someone, it's a matter of focus. We think that this is a good area to focus. But yes, give us an assessment, a larger assessment, and then tell us. I mean, right now we think because of the traffic that we're getting over there, it'd be a good place to start, but they may come up with, let's just do this broader, or let's take the 3 and do them all at once, or, maybe if you have one where you do need to have a little more funds in, we could say you can buy this, but you need to also buy this and tie them together. So
Yeah.
that's the type of stuff that they can do. The consultants, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
That's a good point.
I think that's a good idea.
Any other questions or discussion on this topic?
I think to your point, Whit, it all depends on the target to sponsor. So if it's a broad-based consumer appeal, like let's just pick on Kroger, everyone needs groceries, I think that works. But if it's sports-specific or if it's certain demographic-specific, then I think that you need to parse it down into something that makes sense for that individual company, why they should sponsor, because there's a market base of consumers who are visiting who are going to align with that brand. So you could go all at one time, but then you'd have to go to broad-based consumer brands versus sports specific that might be very interested, like for instance the tennis complex. That could be very specific to the tennis equipment manufacturers or apparel manufacturers, but that doesn't apply necessarily to Siegel or to the golf course.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how those demographics shake out and if it makes sense for that buyer.
I think it's fresh eyes for the national brands too. So Siegel, we have a lot of people who are coming in once a year, rather than SportsCom, you've got people who are coming 3 times a week. That might lend itself to be more of a local type of, sponsor for something like that. But we always go back to Siegel because of just the data that we have that's useful. But I think what I can do, I'll get a park system inventory so you can just have a perspective
That'd be super.
of that type of stuff.
Yeah, knowing what all that, someone's opinion on what all that is worth, when you start packaging these things together, would be very valuable.
What's the overall goal as far as revenue on what would be an ideal and maybe like a realistic? Are we talking on either a yearly or a termed basis?
Much as we can get.
$20 million.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think each of the facilities we're looking at, they have their own budget. And so, what we don't want to do, and I think we want to be cognizant that these are municipal utilities, so we don't want to turn them into, something that's doesn't look municipal and kind of oversteps the bounds on what municipalities are willing to do as far as advertising and such. So some of that goal that we would set would depend upon what the facility requires. So, I'll use the golf course as an example. The golf course is funded on fees and tax revenues, but it's relatively close with the new fee increase that was put in place. It's pretty close. So we may not need as much advertising out there as we would need maybe on Siegel Soccer or to Adams. There may be facilities that we just can't get enough revenue out of there to really make it self-sustaining, but it'll get a lot closer to it. And so, we'd be happy certainly with that from a city standpoint because we're not having to put tax revenues into that. So, it's a broad question. I think we'd probably want to get a consultant on board and have them start to figure out how much they think that they would raise. We got a cursory review out of Mike Humes for one facility, really, is what he focused on. And we took a look at that and said, yes, definitely, this is something that, we should pursue. It was a long non-answer because I didn't answer your question, but,
Is this money a pool or is it going specifically earmarked to each individual location? If we can over-index on one, does that help another that might be harder to sell
Sure.
sponsorship for?
Yeah, I mean, the Parks and Rec budget is broken down on different facilities. So it is a pool to a certain extent. And then, we do have more granular data that we could use to say, yeah, we've accomplished that, now we can move the money over to something else. Because it is one big budget.
Just for knowledge, what was Parks and Recreation, how did we come out with, according to budget last year,
As far as our total fund balance,
Correct.
19.1 million was our annual operating budget for Parks and Rec. Something like that, but there's some more capital type items within that, so we're typically 17 to 19 million, so.
Yeah.
Positive?
No, we're in the negative.
Okay.
We run at 30 to 40%.
30, okay.
At our facility. So SportsCom will do 50% of its operating cost. Patterson Park will do 30% of its operating cost. Siegel's almost covering its operational costs. ATC's dropped off, but we were almost there. We're getting back there for a variety of reasons. And then the golf, it almost pays for itself. So we're on the line with some of those, but then you don't figure in the capital cost. We just did a $1.2 million renovation at the golf course. So
Right.
There's a lot of things. The way I've described it to people at church when they ask about the Sports Authority is hopefully, in the next couple of years, we could allocate some funds when we have to returf all those fields.
Right.
That'd be an offsetting cost. We can dip into that. And then, in 5 years, we're looking at building ball complexes with the same type of funding opportunity.
Yeah, so municipal budgeting it can get a little bit complex, but it's basically two budgets. You have your operating budget, your day-to-day, and then you have your capital budget that you budget separately, and that takes care of capital expenditures. So when you talk about Parks and Recreation, they have a lot of capital expenditures that happen when they build a facility, but then when they remodel a facility and go forward, and then they have quite a bit of operating because it takes a lot of operating expense to keep things running. There will be facilities at Parks and Rec that aren't expected to sustain themselves. I mean, Patterson Park is a community center, so it's expected not to have to be self-sustaining. So, we're not trying to balance out Parks and Recreation budget on the advertising or sponsorships that we would do. But that's why we've kind of broken it down to facilities that do have the potential to raise sponsorship funds and to supplement their particular costs. But back to your original question, if there's any excess, then it would go into the kitty and pick up the others.
One thing I think, what we talked with council recently about Veterans Park, which should be going to bid in October.
Mm-hmm.
Once we complete that project, we're going to turn laser focus to ball fields. So we've got a couple different pieces of property that the city owns, then we're working through some other ones. But it will be good for this board to get ahead of that on the front end, to look at the funding, what partnership opportunities there will be for ball fields, and evaluate that, and hopefully create a more self-sustaining model rather than retroactively doing it on the front end.
Do we have like individual P&L statements on each location, or is it as a department as a whole? Because the reason I asked that, I would like to know, fee-based, what percentage of revenue is that versus, the city putting in on a, a civic, donation, so to speak. But if we could see okay, this facility, what you were saying, this one breaks even almost, this one is, and there's reasons for that, there's no judgment on it, right? But if we looked at that, and then we would look at the type of data you have on the soccer fields, this is how many people are here, this is how many are local, this is how many are visitors, that is a huge aid to help pitch this, or at least equip the consultant with the correct information to pitch it. But I would like to see that just out of curiosity. I think it would be very helpful to look at all that information.
So what we can do is we can run, it'd be hard to do everything, but we can look at our, for comparison, what I call the enterprise facilities that we're not ashamed to make money at and should be making money at, are those three facilities. But we can compare that data with our community center, SportsCom, McFadden, Senior Center, Patterson, that group. And you'll kind of see the difference if that's what you're asking for. The
Yeah, I
fee
think it would
breakdown
just
for each
be-
one.
It would be cool to see, this is how these create revenue in the first place. And then that'll be directional on how we can create more revenue in the same kind of vein. And then it would open up, maybe we could look at this option that fits with that SportsCom, for instance, which is a much different facility than Adams Tennis Complex or soccer fields. But I think getting all of that data, together is on the front end. It would be super helpful to either make strategic decisions on consultants or equip the consultants to go out and find those sponsors.
Yeah.
I might be preaching to the choir. You probably already have stuff like that. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is you're going to see a lot of data, and I think we can generate quite a bit of that.
Yeah, we can.
And then we can, I mean, this is more in Paul's world, but the economic impact of that data.
Yeah, I was just going to mention
comes to
that,
Segal specifically, I mean,
these generates so many different opportunities for revenue for the city itself, and what their information would not show you necessarily is all the economic impact from hotel, motel tax to sales tax at, when they're here shopping, and we can get somewhat event specific with the formula that we use at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, but what they do and what they all do in Rutherford County, the different parks, they generate so much revenue that doesn't go directly back to the facility, but it goes into the community.
So I give the example of the MLS Next Cup that we had that we took from Dallas. They'd been in Dallas, I think, for 5 years. Don't quote me on that, but we took them, and they want to sign a 10-year agreement to come here now. So the direct revenue that we have is $73,000 is what they pay for rental. That doesn't cover necessarily our even staff cost or equipment cost, but during that 7-day tournament, I mean, speculating probably $3.5 million to economic impact locally, which does come back to us through taxes and just, community benefit.
I've got a two-part question. Does the city utilize federal funds through grants or whatnot to fund these type projects? And if they do, does the Sports Authority acquiring these sponsorships, does that negate the grant?
The only grants federally that we get would be for greenways, basically. We get other different types of grants, but we're fortunate. That's what separates Murfreesboro's park system from pretty much anybody else. When you go to conferences and talk, is the belief that the council has in the park system and how they prioritize funding facilities. So I don't think we have any constraints there. Karen?
I'm not sure. We'll double check that. That's a very good question.
I'd have to check. Some of them, there are some that have gone through a conversion process, but I mean, we're talking about more passive space than active programmed areas, preservation areas. But we'll check on it.
All right, anything else on this topic?
One last question, Nate. What role, if any, will this, and I've already gotten this question from a neighbor, so I need to report back. What role, if any, do we play as an authority on what you mentioned there, the future development of new facilities, and things that are outside of obviously getting ahead of it and finding a sponsorship role? Do we play a role at all in that future development of facilities as they come?
Yeah, one of the statutory authority that's granted to the boards is to do a long-term plan. And so, we'll engage as we go forward in a process on how to do that. But that is something that is considered for the authority within its wheelhouse. One of the things we want to be cognizant of is that there is a Parks Commission, and it serves a very important role and has done a great job for a long time. And so they'll continue to go forward and do what the Parks Commission does, and the Sports Authority really serves as a supplementary body for the Parks Commission and the Parks Department. And so our long-term plan would be more or less, here's what is a vision, and then it would be turned over then to the Parks Commission and the Parks Department to really handle whether or not that's adopted by the city or not, because then the next step would be taking that to council, which is what the Planning Commission does.
Okay.
All right. Anything else on this topic?
So I think if I could just, for the next meeting, we'll get data. We'll pull together the data that you've asked for and other data that we can think would be beneficial for the authority to have. And then we'll put together a process perhaps on how we would go about retaining a consultant on doing the valuation of our assets and putting together a plan and implementing it so that we can continue to move forward on the sponsorship ideas.
I was going to make another suggestion that if anybody individually wants to, if you've never been to any of these facilities, the Siegel Complex, particularly the new indoor facility, I'm sure that Nate or Greg could, if you wanted to make that offer to
Absolutely.
Yeah.
at some point
Anytime.
take you guys out there. You don't have to do it as a group necessarily, but I think it'd be beneficial if you have not seen, particularly that one. It's a great facility.
I think one other,
I'd take you up on that if you,
absolutely.
some time. I know the Adams Center inside and out, but I haven't seen the Siegel Complex. I'd love
We'll
to.
give you the tour and can show you kind of what's come through.
Yeah.
Our goal with that facility is make Murfreesboro a destination for soccer development. And it's become, we have a group of college students that are about to turn pro who live here basically 11 months out of the year just to train at that facility, and then they go to pro programs or different college programs. So it's a lot of really cool things. One other piece of data that we'll bring maybe is our CIP just for parks. We're working on revising that, our 5-year outlay for funding bigger projects. Maybe we can just show you that plan for the next 5 years so you see bigger picture what's happening outside of these facilities and some of the things that are coming down the road.
And also, do you want to do a AI demonstration or?
Yeah, I'm going to get with Sam about that and see if we'd rather generate a report or come do it,
Okay.
live. He likes to show it off, so we might bring.
Yeah.
I have one other question, and I'm sorry, I've had so many. I just, 2 weekends ago, I went down to Columbia, South Carolina, and I watched Liverpool play Manchester United in a preseason exhibition. I'm a Liverpool fan, right? That was done through the Columbia, similar board to this, to bring it in, and they bid out on, and because I did a little bit of reading on it, they bid out from the promoter who brought 3 EPL teams over, English Premier League teams over. Not at that scale necessarily, but is that within the scope of this board to look at events that would drive, that are not necessarily like sponsorship or anything like that, but event-based things like the Nashville Sports Authority brought in F1 racing and other things like that? Not that we're at that scale because of the facilities that we have, but other things in that manner that maybe are 2-3 steps down from something like that. Is that kind of within the scope?
I think anything that could increase the reputability of the facilities, we'd be all, on board. We do some of that bid work with Paul and his team already, so absolutely.
Okay.
Good thought.
So it wouldn't be out of the question to engage with the TSSAA on some of these topics that were just mentioned and folks like that was one of the questions I got actually was from the TSSAA.
Engage in what manner?
Just these conversations around their championships, those being played here, things of that nature. Is that something we should engage in, or should we push those to you or send those to Paul?
Well, we of course had direct contact with them daily, or weekly, I should say. And we, on various events like Spring Fling and others, we try to get continuation of the current contract that we have. Basketball is the other one, and then the girls soccer did go to Chattanooga, I guess a year or two ago, and the football, of course, that's been gone from Murfreesboro for a while. But Spring Fling and basketball, the two really big generators, at least from our standpoint, from an economic impact. So yeah, we definitely have a great relationship with them, and would love to, and when the girls soccer left, within 3 days, we had an event that replaced the girls soccer tournament that was twice the size. So there's all kinds of opportunities out there that he said earlier, you had to turn away some people. So when a weekend like that opens up, it's generally taken pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think with the girls soccer, I forget how many teams, it was 40 teams that they would bring from in the state, and we got in a tournament, I think that brought in 150 teams.
Yeah,
That
so-
replaced it. It's regional. They're coming, 2/3 of them are coming from outside of Tennessee.
Just trying to get an idea of what we should be spending, not that I have a ton of time, but what should we be spending that time doing, right? I've heard the conversation about minor league baseball. Like where does that stand? Is that something that we need to concern ourselves with? I got that question from a neighbor too. Just again, I'm trying to wrap my arms around what exactly we're going to do and what we're to some extent allowed to do or authorized to do.
Yeah, the minor league baseball, it's a good example to bring up as to where the board would fit in on that. We brought that to council as an idea that came to us by an individual, and then the league joined in because they had a lot of interest in coming here. We didn't spend a lot of staff resources on it because we wanted to talk to council first before we engaged in that type of discussion, because it takes a lot of resources to get through that. What we learned early on was that the economics just didn't work right off the bat.
Yeah.
And it had less to do with baseball and more to do with construction costs, quite frankly. And so we couldn't put that together, so that stopped. A situation like that, however, if it had progressed and gone forward, then the board, we would have probably had come back to the board and said, look, here's an idea on a facility and how we would finance that, and how the financial structure would be, and then that would come to the board, and the board would have the authority then to actually engage directly in the financing for that type of facility. There's a lot to that. It may require city backing before we finance it.
Sure.
Depends on how we would go out to market and things like that, and where we would raise the financing for that. But it's a good example of the board would be authorized to engage in that, would be authorized to engage in the financing of that. Obviously, there would be a lot of engagement with the city and city council because of the impact of something like that type of facility. But as far as baseball itself, it didn't go any further than the initial discussions, just because we were so far off on the economics and construction costs at that time. Were so they hadn't caught up yet. Someday they might.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect timing.
We're just waiting for you. We're just waiting for you. You have a vice chair, but
I'll turn it over to him. All right, so we finished with this one item?
yeah. So I think
Now we're under other business. Is
other
there
business.
business to be discussed? Hearing none, I would move to the next one where we talk about future meetings. I don't know how long or how many, how many you anticipate wanting, how often you want to meet, but I guess that's what we're going to discuss.
Yeah. I don't know if right at this point in time we have to have a regular schedule of meetings, but I think that giving us, 30, 60 days, a couple months,
You can do 30 days if you want.
30 days.
So we can get it rolling. And then-
Yeah, sometimes late September, early October, perhaps, come back together and we can talk about, by then we should have a process in on maybe retaining a consultant at that point in time, and some data that we can share and some placer information, if not a demonstration. So it's interesting. It's interesting software.
Yeah. So will the city reach out to, I guess, do a poll on when the best date is? That what the preference of the committee would be?
Yeah, we'll have Brenda, if I can use her, to send out a poll to find a date that would work for everybody.
Okay. Does that work for everybody?
We'll target that late September, early October timeframe.
All right.
It'll be fall break,
Fall break.
falling during that time period, so.
Seems like every time I pick a date, there's a break in school.
Fall break's a little bit later this year. It's the October 6th week instead of, it's that first full week. So
So we'll try and
really
get
at
before
the
that.
end of September, the beginning of October, that week is still a potential
Okay,
for the fall breakers, which I'm one of.
okay. All right, we'll try and fit it around that.
County schools is.
All right, it looks like we've come to the, I'm sorry, do you have something else?
Yeah, I just was going to check with Adam to see if he had anything to,
Okay.
No?
no? Okay.
Just help me along. I hadn't been chair very long, so just let me know.
You're doing
Nate,
great,
keep me
man.
straight, buddy. Appreciate it.
You're
Honored to
doing
be
great.
chair, by the way. Thank y'all for electing me, and good luck to the vice chair. Well, this is good stuff. I think there's some real opportunity here. I think as we evolve and learn more about what we want to do and what we can do, I think it'll be very beneficial to the city. So I thank you for allowing us to serve.
I didn't bring any cards with me, but I'm going to send an email out to everybody with my phone number in case you just have any random questions, or Craig, maybe both of ours, an email. And if you want a tour of any of the facilities, you can just call me or shoot me a text message, and we'll make it happen.
Great.
I guess, will this come out in the paper? I know the camera was here and city TV and all that type stuff, but if we're hit with questions from neighbors and whatnot, do we just send them to you guys?
You can, certainly, yes, absolutely, if you,
Especially as a newly formed board and.
right.
There's not a lot to talk about right now because we're trying to
Yeah. Okay.
send everything to Mary Elam.
Yeah,
The hard hit, she loves the hard-hitting questions.
I do.
That was a voice.
That's right.
Okay, guys, well, I'm about to officially close the meeting with this gavel, so unless anybody has any other business, we will stand adjourned.